91.
91. So let's go over what we learned yesterday. Yesterday we learned that what does it mean, aser ta'aser? What is this double language? You shall surely tithe. And the Gemara says it means that you should tithe in order to get rich, or in order to give a lot of misers, a lot of other tithings. If you give a tithing, you should give it in order to get more, to be able to give more tithings, because you will be blessed. Now that pasuk, aser ta'aser, doesn't simply mean that. This is, of course, a insight that Rabbi Yochanan is saying, that it means you should give it in order to get rich, even though normally we don't do mitzvahs for a reward. As we know from Pirkei Avos, in the ethics of our fathers, it says you should not be like the servants who do mitzvah, who could fulfill their obligations in order to get rewards. Ella havoka avodim, you should be like servants, hameshamshin esarav, that serve their master, shaloy almanas l'kapapras, not on the condition to get a reward. We know, we trust, we know that Hashem will give rewards. We have full trust in Hashem, but we're not supposed to do the mitzvahs for a reward. And this teaching does negate that. And it says that you should take a tithing from your produce in order to get a reward, which will be wealth. And so when Rabbi Yochanan asks this child, the son of Reish Lakish, who's his nephew, he asks his nephew, what did you learn today in yeshiva and cheder? And the nephew says, I learned the pasuk of aser ta'aser. And he asked Rabbi Yochanan, he says, so what is the meaning of this pasuk? And Rabbi Yochanan says that the meaning is aser b'shvil shetis aser, or shetis asher. You do it in order to get wealthy. And the child is a little surprised. Like, how could you do that? You're going to do a mitzvah for a reward? We don't do mitzvahs for rewards. We do mitzvahs because we're getting closer to Hashem. This is what we're obligated to do. Not for the reward. We're going to get some reward for it. Yeah, we're going to get a reward, but not because of that. Person doesn't, you're not, a person doesn't honor his parents because he's going to get some reward. You honor your parents because it's this is an opportunity for you. It's not about a reward. And the child is very surprised that this is not the way we're supposed to serve Hashem. So the child says, Menoloch, how do you know that you're supposed to do that? Because this seems to run contrary to all other mitzvahs. This is a mitzvah that's unique, that you're supposed to do it in order for the reward, even though all other mitzvahs we tell you not to. It's a surprising thing that this mitzvah is different. Charity is different. Do it for a reward. All the other mitzvahs, we don't do that. So Rabbi Yochanan, he understood this child's question differently. He understood the child's question, not how do you know that you're allowed to do this when it comes to giving charity, because we never do this type of thing. He didn't understand it that way. He understood it that how do you know you're going to get rich? How do you know it works? Who says that you're going to get rich? He understood to mean, how do you know you're going to get rich? Really, the child was smarter than that. He didn't question that you'll get rich. He questions, how do you know you're allowed to do it for a reward? He was asking based on another halacha, based on another teaching. But the Rabbi Yochanan understood him to mean, how do you know you'll get rich for doing, how do you know that's the reward for the giving the tithings? And we don't know the rewards for most mitzvahs. And therefore he was surprised, like, how do you know you're going to get rich? And how to translate the verse that way. So Rabbi Yochanan answered him based on his understanding of the question. He said, well, try it out. You'll see. How do I know it'll work? Try it out. That was his answer. Try it out. According to the child's question, you can't say try it out is not a good answer. Child was asking, how do you know that you're allowed to do such a thing? So Rabbi Yochanan can't answer on that question. On such a question, you can't answer, go try it out. That wouldn't be an appropriate answer. The appropriate answer would be that I have a proof, I have a teacher, I have the reason why you normally aren't allowed to. Maybe he'll explain the reason you normally aren't allowed to do things for a reward, and here is different for some reason. Maybe you could explain the difference in the reason. Maybe you could say the source of it. But Rabbi Yochanan just says, go try it out, because he understood the question to mean that who says it works? Who says you actually become rich when you give a tithing? And on this, Rabbi Yochanan told him, try it out. Then the child asks further. He says, that's also a shiloh. That's also a big question, a contradiction, really, because are you allowed to try it out, test Hashem, and see if it works? In other words, the first problem the child had was, are you allowed to do a mitzvah for a reward? The next question is, are you allowed to do a mitzvah and test Hashem? So it's really there's really two problems here, two halachic problems in this statement of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan's statement about Aser Bishvil Shatis Asher, tithe in order to get rich. Number one, are you allowed to do a mitzvah for a ulterior motive? And number two, are you allowed to test Hashem, which is what Rabbi Yochanan continues to say, that try it out, meaning test Hashem and see if it works. Are you allowed to test Hashem? We have a pasuk in the Chumash that tells us that Hashem didn't want us to test him. And the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Yochanan brings from Rabbi Hoshea that this is an exception to the rule. And when he answers that this is an exception to the rule, it basically answers the child's first question as well, which was, are you allowed to serve Hashem in order to get a reward for an ulterior motive and for a reward motive? And based on the fact that this mitzvah is different, this is a unique mitzvah, you can test me about this, which means that you're testing Hashem and you want the reward. It ultimately concludes that this is allowed. And he concludes with a verse, Varikoisi lachem bracha ad belidai, that if you do give the charity to the people who work in my temple, you have to understand that the Leviim and the Kohanim, they basically had no source of income. So they're considered poor. So our Gemara is, even though it's talking about the Kohanim and the Leviim, it's in the tithing, it ultimately is referring to the poor, because these people are poor and they rely on these foods, on these tithings for their sustenance. So you could test Hashem, and Hashem will give you a bracha ad belidai. He will pour for you a bracha ad belidai. And the Gemara explains what that means. That's unlimited blessing. And the reason why it's unlimited, the way the Gemara explains it, is that it's until your lips get worn out from saying die. Yes, Ben, I think you were up.
Yeah, I wanted to say, I find it lacking the simple explanation of asot aser means. The pshat of it is collect and give your tithe.
Right.
So that's the simple explanation. They go immediately to the higher level of explanations, But
well, why does it say it twice?
That,
Why can't it say ta'aser?
It can say ta'aser, but it's the
Without
same
aser.
like you can say Kadosh
Vishinantam.
titkadesh leHashem.
Vishinantam levanecha ta'aser es kol tuvas harecha. It's the same thing. It should say once. Why does it say? Does it say shanein vishinantam?
Because it's a shorter way of saying a whole long sentence. Go collect your Meiser and then give the Meiser.
Well, you know it's double.
Aser tells you this is what you have to do.
And if it didn't,
collect and give your tithes.
But if it didn't say aser ta'aser and it just said it once, I would think that it's that it would be enough.
No, it's not.
It's like when you wake up your kids in the morning, you say, wake up, hurry up, come on, hurry up, come on.
Okay.
You can say it twice, but in the Torah, you're not going to do that. The Torah, you say it once is enough.
Right, aser ta'aser is one.
Aser ta'aser is double. Say aser is called tzvat b'zarecha. Vishinantam levanecha. It doesn't say shanein vishinantam, it doesn't say it double.
Yeah.
So it's surprising. So that's the reason for a drasha. Now, there is an opinion in the Gemara.
But I'm saying it's lacking the pshat. First say the pshat, and then you can do whatever you want with it. You can.
We know the pshat. The pshat is so obvious that the Gemara is not going to tell you the pshat in the pasuk. That's simple. Take maaser. I mean, the Gemara doesn't have to explain that. That's so obvious. Don't kill. Loy sirtzach. It doesn't have to tell you what that means. I mean, it's obvious what it means. Don't kill. Don't steal. But when it says aser, it means to tithe. We don't need explanation on that. We need an explanation why it says it twice. It says it twice, then now
aser is just the word. Aser is just the word. But if you say aser ta'aser, it's like a saying that you can use it.
But the Torah doesn't need to do that. Why is it wasting words? Ink. It's costing more. The Sefer Torah now costs more. The Sefer has to write extra ink. Why? The Torah never uses an extra letter.
The pshat is what I think.
What do you think?
I think it's lacking the pshat explanation on it.
You want the Gemara to say it means take a tithing? That's what you want the Gemara to do?
Yes.
What are you kindergarten?
No.
Why should the Gemara explain that to you?
I'm a
does the Gemara explain loy sirtzach? Does the Gemara say what loy sirtzach means? Why do you want the Gemara to explain it? Lo tirtzach.
Oh.
You want the Gemara to explain what it means? I think it's obvious. Aseret kol tvat zarecha. It's very obvious. The Gemara is not going to explain that. The Gemara is here to tell us why it says it twice.
Do they use it anywhere in the Torah? Just one word?
All the time. All the time. All positive commandments.
Without a sentence, they just say aser.
Vishinantam levanecha. Does it say it twice?
No, but it's more than one word. Lebanecha. Asor, you can say
aser es kol tvat zarecha.
Asor your field, or asor your
it's called tvat zarecha. It says that.
Asor your produce.
Yeah,
it says you can use it as long as it's more than one word. You cannot use just one word, and that's the sentence.
I'm not sure what you're saying. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, we'll agree to disagree. I'm not sure what you're saying.
Okay.
But I did mention yesterday that there is an opinion that says that if the people speak that way, so sometimes the Chumash will use a double language if that's the way people speak, like, come on, people say it twice or something like that. People say aser ta'aser, if that's the common term,
Right, that's what I'm saying.
The Gemara, because there is such an opinion. Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold of that. Rabbi Yochanan says the Chumash is not going to, Hashem is not going to add an extra word just because people speak that way. But there is such an opinion in the Gemara.
Yeah, but all he does, he changes the second word.
He explains that it's meant for a drasha.
It's written, he changes it and then explains it.
He changes the initial way. Let me mute everyone here. I'm going to mute everyone. Oh, it's not working. Okay. He changes the way you read it before based on the fact that the way it's written is to asher. Aser to asher.
No,
that's the way it's written. So that's the way it's read. What you're saying is the way it's read. So he says, based on the way it's written, it's acceptable to translate it that way because that's what it's hinting. This is a drush. This is a drasha that the Gemara is explaining. And the reason
the way it's written, it can be two meanings because there's no nikud.
Yeah,
and you
exactly.
using the meaning you like, but it doesn't
not the way you like. He has a tradition.
The only meaning.
Right. So obviously he has a tradition that's the meaning. But it does have to fit. He does need an explanation how that could fit with other statements. Like Tanasu as Hashem.
No, I'm saying in Pardes you have four different depths of looking at it. But it's lacking the simple meaning of it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but that's what I'm arguing with you. That the Gemara is not here to tell you.
Taseh is an extra word. Taseh is an extra word. It doesn't have to be in the sentence. Okay, so then the Torah, we have a tradition that says when there's an extra word, there's got to be a reason behind it. So the explanation, aseh shetit asher, but I agree that it should be sheteh asher. Okay, so that because the dagesh could be over on the right side of the shin or the left side of the shin. So
it's just a different explanation. But it can have
they're trying to explain the second word. Why is the second word there?
Right.
Hashem
but it
didn't
can
have to
be
give
a
it to
simple
us.
explanation, and it can be a more deeper explanation.
But we're not arguing that there is simple meanings, and there's also a Kabbalistic meaning. But the Gemara is not here to tell you the Kabbalistic meaning. Go look in the Zohar for the Kabbalistic meaning. The Gemara is not going to tell you the simple meaning because that you go to kindergarten for. The Gemara is here to tell you the drush, the drasha. That's what I'm saying. Like you expect the Gemara to tell you the Kabbalistic meaning. You're like, why? I don't get. I don't understand.
To get the Kabbalistic meaning.
Okay.
You know, there's a simple meaning. You're right. We're not arguing. There's a simple meaning, but the Gemara is not going to tell you that. That you go to kindergarten for. You can use your dictionary. Use your dictionary for that. You know that there is a simple meaning, and we're not taking it out of the simple meaning. Simple meaning is still true, but there's also a Kabbalistic meaning and a drush meaning, and we're doing the drush now.
Of course, of course.
So that's why. Okay. So bottom line is that we have this drasha here. We have this teaching that this mitzvah is different than all other mitzvahs. The mitzvah of taking meiser. Now, Tosfos brings down over here that what we mentioned yesterday, what we started mentioning yesterday, is that the mitzvah of taking meiser, it goes both ways. That on the one hand, if you give meiser, if you give a tithing, you will get rewarded with wealth. If you don't, then it works the opposite way. That you actually lose. You lose money. And that happens, Tosfos bases it on the fact that it says, Hayoytze hasadeh shana shana, what comes out of the field every year. And the way he brings it based on a medrash is that if you don't give proper tithing, you will only get what comes out from the field every year, which means what you normally gave for a tithing. That's all you'll end up with. So if you normally got 100 bushels every year and you would give 10 to charity, to the poor, and now to tithing, and now you decide, why am I giving so much away? What's going to end up happening is you will end up only with 10 and not 100, even though every year you were able to harvest 100. This year, you're only going to have 10. Why? Because you were cheap on the other guy, on the poor. Therefore, Hashem ends up giving you hayoytze hasadeh, what you normally took out of your field, shana shana. That's what you will get. You will get what you normally took out from the field for the other guy, which is almost like whatever you judge someone else, it's really you end up judging yourself. You know, what you want to give them, what ends up happening is you end up in their situation, and that's what you end up getting. You know, it comes back to you. Whatever you give, it comes back to you. You know, that's sort of if you look at it, if you think about it, that's what ends up happening. Yes.
But we say Hashem punishes us measure for measure.
Okay.
Measure for measure means we should get 90. We didn't give the 10, he's going to take the 10 from us now. And he's going to give us only the 90 instead of 100. That's measure for measure.
We didn't give the
No.
10, but think about it this way.
Hashem gives you everything.
Hashem gives you everything, but measure
so he
for
can take
measure,
everything from you. And the
measure
fact that he
for
gives you the
measure
10
is
means
10
he's
for
very
10.
he's very nice to you. He doesn't have to give you anything. So when you
I
say
have to think
measure
about
for
this.
measure, it means he could take everything from you. But the fact is that he's giving you 10 means that he's being very kind to you, and he's not taking everything from you.
No, he's
It's an interesting
taking
question.
90% of it. It's not measure for measure. 10% is 10%.
In other words, what you're saying is you should only lose 10 because you
Right.
you cheated him on 10. You should only lose 10.
Right.
So that's an interesting question. I have to think about it. But in any event, the point is that when you don't give the 10, so what Hashem does is he sort of he ends up only giving you 10. Now, and you lose all the 90. Now,
Rabbi?
the thing is, the Taanis brings a story here. The story Taanis brings is a guy who would always be able to harvest 1,000, I guess, cases of some produce, and LF core, 1,000 core of produce. Core is a certain measurement, and he ends up, well, he's getting old, so he tells his son, every year I harvest 1,000, and I give charity. I give 100 to charity. And Baruch Hashem, I'm very rich, and this is why I give charity, and Hashem. So that's what he tells his son, and his son decides. His father tells his son, make sure to do the same thing. So the son listens to him the first year. He calls it the second year. He listens to his father, and he does that. He gives 100 away from the 1,000. He made 1,000 core, and he gives away 100. But then he starts thinking and saying, wow, this is crazy. I'm giving away so much. So the next year he decides, I'm not going to give away so much charity. That's it. I'm keeping it. Sure enough, the next year, guess what happened? The next year, he ends up only with 100. His fields only produced 100 core. Now his relatives come and they get all dressed up, and they come by, and he asks them, "What are you doing? You're celebrating my loss? Why are you getting dressed up? When when I lost and I'm now suffering, and you are celebrating? Doesn't this is not nice." And they tell him, well, the way it used to be when your father had the field, and last year when you had the field, you were the owner, and you gave away the tithings to the Kohen, to Hashem. Right? You gave it away. So you were the owner. The tithings went to the Kohen, the priest. But now you decided not to give your tithings. So what ended up happening is Hashem says, you know what? You're going to get the tithing. You'll get the 10%. And he's going to keep the rest, which means that Hashem is going to be the owner. Hashem took away your ownership. He became the owner, and he made you into a kohen. So they said, wow, you became a kohen. We're now rejoicing. We're celebrating that you became the kohen. You became the priest. You received 10%. Look at that. Hashem decided he's going to be the owner now because you wanted to jip the kohen and whatever. So Hashem said, look, so we put on our nice white fancy clothing and we're celebrating with you. You became a kohen. So that's the story that's brought in, I guess it's some medrash. Taanis brings this interesting story.
But that's
So,
not reality, because he cannot go to the shul and say, I'm a Kohen today.
True. That's true. That's true. But Hashem is treating him like a Kayin.
Right.
Hashem is treating him like a Kayin because he wanted to gyp them. So Hashem said, okay, so you'll be the Kayin. You know, you're that's how you're treated. We're going to make you the Kayin, and you can get your 10% now. And then he brings what I brought yesterday from Rashi in Chumash. He brings that same pasuk. Ish es kadoshav lo yihiyu. It's the same concept that if a person keeps the holies to himself and he doesn't separate them properly, so then lo yihiyu, he will end up with only having the tithe. He keeps it to himself, he's going to only lo yiyu, he will have isesh kadoshav. If he keeps his holies, it doesn't separate them. That's what he's going to get. He's going to only get what he was supposed to give away. And then Taisus brings another interpretation. Hayoytze hasmin hasada shana shana. At the end of the pasuk that talks about giving a tithing, it says that we translated earlier that if you don't give, then you're going to end up with what you normally gave. So he has another interpretation at the end of Taisus. He says that if you don't give, then you'll end up hayoytze hasada shana shana, whatever you normally would give and you didn't give, that's going to go to the person who's yoytze hasada. It's going to end up not going to you. In the end, it's going to end up, if you don't separate the meiser, your field is going to end up going to the person who's called a yoytze min hasada. Who do we know is called a field man? Esav. Esav is called a yoytze hasada shana shana. I'm sorry, ish hasada. The Esav ish what does it say? Esav ish sada. Yaakov ish tam yoshev vayhalim. So Esav is called an ish sada. So it's going to be hayoytze ben hasada. In other words, Taisus fits it with the wording of the pasuk that says, "Give meiser." You should give a tithing. That if you don't, you're going to end up, the goyim are going to steal your field. Basically, that's what's going to end up happening, and that's another way of translating that pasuk. So this is Taisus's insight into giving meiser. Now, what is interesting and what I left out was this one little point in the beginning of Tosfos, which seems like a side point, but it actually is a very important and it's a very interesting halacha or discussion in halacha that's brought. And Tosfos does take on one view, which is not necessarily the accepted view, but it does carry with it a lot of weight. And that is that Tosfos says that, what does it mean? Aser taser, surely take meiser, es kol meiser tvuaska, all the as kol tvuaska, all of your grain. All, what does it mean? All of your grain. Of course, take tithe all your grain. Why does it say all of your grain? So Tosfos says that this means that it doesn't only apply to grain. It says all of your grain, because adding all of your revach, all of your net profit, all of your profits, you should be tithing. And Tosfos seems to hold that there's a biblical obligation not only to tithe your produce, but it's really to tithe every business that you're in, anything that you make money from. One example Tosfos says would be if you lend money on interest. So you have to take a tithe from your interest. How do you lend money on interest? The Jew is not allowed to lend money on interest.
The goyim, no?
The goyim. that if you lend money to goyim, you charge interest. That's the normal. You charge interest, and you're supposed to take meiser from that as well. Biblically, Tosfos holds that there's a biblical obligation to take meiser. Now, this is very interesting opinion, because the common understanding is not that it's a biblical obligation to take a tithing. Of course, it's a very popular custom among religious Jews that they separate a tenth from their earnings to meiser, and some even give a fifth, which means 2/10. They give 20% of their earnings to meiser, but normally it's not understood to be a biblical obligation. It's normally understood to either be a rabbinic obligation or a minhag yafa, very good custom. But of course, biblically, there is an obligation to take a tithing, but that's of your produce. That would be the meiser that goes to the Levites and that goes to the poor, or is supposed to be eaten in Jerusalem, the second tithing. So there is tithings that are biblical, but not normally. We don't consider meiser to be a biblical obligation. But Tosfos here does take on this view that it is a biblical obligation. And what would come out from Tosfos is that whenever you do take a tithing from all of your earnings, you are guaranteed to get rich. You're guaranteed to get rich from tithing your earnings. And then that doesn't only apply to your produce, because the pasuk is a pasuk about, according to Tosfos, it's a pasuk that includes all type of earnings. And the way they understand this sifri is this source that Tosfos has is that it's only a asmachta, which means it does bring a verse, but it's not the main meaning of the verse. And the rabbis established this law, or it's a minhag maybe, but it could be it's a chelak, it's a part of the mitzvah of giving charity, but it's not a mitzvah in its own right. So anyway, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of ink that has been spilled in discussion of what is the obligation of taking meiser. It's definitely a highly encouraged minhag or rabbinic obligation. But to say it's biblical, generally it's not considered to be biblical. But we do have Tosfos over here who says, he brings a sifri, and he sees it from a word in the extra word in the verse. The verse says all of your grain, and that extra word is including all types of profit and earnings, and would be biblical according to Tosfos to take a tithing of everything that you earn. And I will just mention that the easiest way to give a tithing from your earnings is not to deposit it into your account, because once it's deposited into your account, it's very hard to go and separate it afterwards. If you deposit in a special account that you have for your tithing, then it becomes a lot easier, because you just never touch that money. But if it goes into your regular account, all of a sudden this bill starts covering this bill and that bill. So a trick of how to be able to give a tithing is by initially putting it into a different account right away. And this way it ends up working out, and it's definitely something that's highly encouraged, and it does bring a lot of blessings. Yes, Ben.
I thought
you know what? I think
to...
David. I'm sorry, David had his hand up. I think a long time.
Okay.
David.
You can let Ben go. Go ahead.
It's fine, David. Just continue. Tell us what you want to say.
So Rabbi Steinsaltz says, according to Rabbeinu Hananel and also the Maharsha, so there's two interpretations. He says one is the Peshat, it's literal, that you tithe your produce properly so that you can be blessed with plenty, and you'll be able to tithe your produce many times again. But the other interpretation, according to Rabbi Yochanan, it says that it's understood as being based on the fact that the Hebrew letters shin and sin are written with the same character when written without the vowels. So accordingly, the second verb can be read with the vowel placed on a shin instead of it says ta'asher, which means
Right.
you'll become wealthy, rather than with the vowel placed as the sin, which you tie. So in other words,
We
the
said this
verbs.
already, though.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you said this.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Okay, Ben, yes.
Yeah, I wanted to say, how do you tithe your earnings if you're not supposed to count before the tithe?
If you're not supposed to count before the
Before,
tithe.
or before saying the blessing on the count, or before counting,
So you're talking about produce now.
right?
So when you
Why don't you? Well, if it's equal, if you want to tithe the money, you have to act as if it was produce.
well, this is the thing. While you're about to count your earnings, you know, while you're heading to count, then you say Yehi Ratzon, and then when you start counting, you say the bracha of that Hashem brings a bracha into this business, and then after you finish counting everything, and then you can't. It's a bracha levatala. It's a bracha in vain if you say it, but you say it before.
Well, before you can. Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to continue into the next Gemara. The Gemara that we're starting is Visu. Actually, I did want to mention one more thing that Ezra had asked a question yesterday, and that was that it does seem a little disrespectful the way this child answers Rabbi Yochanan, and he tells him that if I would have been there, I don't need you because when I reach that pasuk, I'll understand this. I don't need you, and I don't need Hoshea, your Rebbe, because when I reach that pasuk in Malachi, I will know the meaning. I will see that this is allowed and this is okay. And so by saying those words, it does seem a little disrespectful. So one of the commentaries mentions that that's why Rashi tells us that this is the nephew of Rabbi Yochanan, and because of that, at least this is the way one of the commentaries understands it. He's telling you that they had a more family relationship rather than a Rav and a student relationship. It was more of a family relationship, and that's why he spoke in somewhat of a disrespectful way. So that's one of the one of the commentaries does touch on that and understands it to be that way. Although I'm not fully comfortable, I'm sure there must be some other explanation. But so far, that's what I found, that it had to do with the fact that he was it was a family, because it was he was a relative, so he was talking to him like a relative, not like a teacher. Okay,
like an uncle.
An uncle. Okay, so the next Gemara, let me tell you where we are. 9a, 1 in the art scroll, and Vesu. Vesu is on the second column, the second paragraph in the second column, 9a1. Now, in the Gemara, if you're in the regular Gemara, we are on Vesu. There's one dot in the Gemara. It's about 15 lines from the top of the page, maybe 18 lines from the top of the page. Vesu and further. Vesu ashkeche, and further on another occasion, meaning a different time. Ashkeche Rabbi Yochanan leYenuke de Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan found the child of Reish Lakish, and the Yosef Yamar, he was sitting and he was saying a pasuk in Mishlei, in Proverbs. Ivelas Adam to Salef Darkoi. The Ivelas, the crookedness or the foolishness of a person, it perverts his way. The Al Hashem Yizaf Liboy. against Hashem, his heart is angry, which basically means that a person does something wrong himself, but then he gets angry at Hashem. He acts in a foolish way, and then he's angry at Hashem. So Yosef Rabbi Yochanan was sitting, and he was wondering. Amar, he said, Mi'ika midi dechsivi bechsuvi. Is there anything written in the writings of the Ksuvim, meaning the 24 books of the Tanakh, of the later books of the Tanakh, the Loi Remizi Ba'araisa, that's not written and hinted to in the first 5 books, in the 5 books of Moses, in the Chumash, not in the Torah. In other words, everything that's later on must be hinted to in the Torah. V'haksiv, doesn't it say? I'm sorry. Amar Lei. I skipped a line. Amar Lei. So the child of Reish Lakish told his uncle. He said, "Atu ha milay remiza." You think this is not hinted to in the Chumash? V'haksiv, it says, "Vayechradu ish alachiv vayetze libam vayechradu ish alachiv leimar mazois asa elikim lanu." What does it say in the Chumash? It says in the Chumash that when the brothers were dealing with the fact that Binyamin had been caught with the silver goblet, so their hearts, vayetze libam, their hearts went out. They felt terrible. And vayechredu, they became afraid, each one saying to their brother, "What is it that Hashem did to us?" Now, why did they say that? They're blaming Hashem, that Hashem is doing something to us. They're asking, what is it that Hashem has done to us, even though they know very clearly that they sinned with selling their brother Joseph, and that's why they're even here in Egypt, is because they're hoping that maybe they're going to find Joseph. One of the reasons why they're here is they're hoping to find Joseph. So look at what they did. They were crooked. They acted in a crooked way. And then they're and what are they doing? They're blaming Hashem. So what happened here? Dal Eine, Rabbi Yochanan lifted up his eyes. Literally, it means his eyes, but it means like his eyelids or his eyelashes. V'chazabe, and he looked at this child, which means that he was quite impressed, seemingly impressed with this child, that he found a pasuk that specifically talks about this verse in Mishlei. I mean, it hints very clearly to this verse. Asya ime apikte, the boy's mother came and took him out from in front of Rabbi Yochanan. Amra lei, she said to him, Ta mikamei, come from before him. Deloi liyavid lach, that he shouldn't do to you kida'avid liyavuch, like he did to your father. What did he do? What did Rabbi Yochanan do to this child's father, Reish Lakish? The Rabbi Yochanan caused him to die. So Rabbi Yochanan caused him to die, that the mother was all nervous that Rabbi Yochanan is now going to do some type of an ayin hara, evil eye, on this child and cause cause him to die as well. Now, the interesting thing in this Gemara is that it tells us that everything that we learn in the Nevi'im, the Ksuvim, at least in the Ksuvim, in the writings, there's some hint to it somewhere in the Torah. And that's a very interesting point, especially because it says that all the books are going to be no longer used when Mashiach comes, all the 24 books of Moses, except for Megillas Esther. It says, Asidim li batel. They're all going to be they're all going to be batel when Mashiach comes, and only Megillas Esther is going to be used. Now that sounds very surprising, because how could it be? It says Kol Sifrei Hanavim ve'aksuvim asidim li batel. It's the Rambam brings it in I think in the laws of Megillah. Now, of course, the Ravid argues on this, but this is a very surprising statement that that all the books are going to be batel. Kol Sifrei Hanavim v'chol Aksuvim, all the prophets in the writings are going to be batel the days of Mashiach, except Megillas Esther, and it will exist like the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, and like the halachos of Torah, that Shabbat Peh, that oral Torah that will never be batel, that will never be nullified. And even though all the tsaras are going to be forgotten in batel, but we're never going to forget the tsaras of the story of Purim, the holiday of Purim. So this is what it says. Now, of course, the Ravid says nothing's going to be batel from the Torah, every sefer, but it means it won't be read in public. Maybe that's the way he understands it. But the Rambam seems to say it's all going to be batel. The question is it possible that all the Torah, the Torah is going to be batel, that all these books of the prophets? So the commentary, one of the explanations is that everything in the Nevi'im and the Ksuvim is hinted to in the Torah. When Mashiach comes, we are going to understand the depths of the Torah with all the secrets. The secrets of the Torah will be revealed. And when the secrets of the Torah are revealed, we're not going to need to see it from the prophets. We're going to see straight through the Chumash. We're going to see all the teachings of the Nevi'im in the Ksuvim in the Chumash. So therefore, all the books are going to be batel. So that would be an explanation based on our Gemara of how it's possible that they will be batel. It's because we will see it in the Chumash itself. We'll be able to understand all the teachings straight from the Chumash without having to go to the Tanakh, to the Nevi'im Ksuvim. Yes, David.
Rabbi Steinsaltz says an interesting thing.
Yeah.
He says that he tells how this young son was the nephew, and he says on this occasion, on one occasion, Rabbi Yochanan grew angry with his student and gazed at him with such a severe face that Reish Lakish died. So Reish Lakish left behind several children, both boys and girls, and the boy that's mentioned here was presumably the youngest. So based on the subject matter of the discussion and the style of exchange, he was probably around 7 or 8 years old. And his comments attest to both his mental acuity and his youthful impudence. Apparently, this is the last sentence, apparently this youth died at an early age, as we find no mention of any sons of Reish Lakish among the sages of the subsequent generation.
So yeah, so we mentioned that it's gonna, like, he shouldn't die like his father, because his father died from Rabbi Yochanan getting angry. Although it's a little unclear. Rashi here says that he put his eyes against Reish Lakish. In other words, he looked at him negatively, and that's how he died. But in the Gemara there, that says Rabbi Yochanan became distressed because of Reish Lakish's response that you didn't benefit me. And Reish Lakish became seriously ill for having pained Rabbi Yochanan. So was it because he pained Rabbi Yochanan, or was it because Rabbi Yochanan put an ayin hara into him? It seems to be a little unclear. Rashi and Argamar seems to say that it has to do with the that he like put an ayin hara that he shouldn't do to you because he looked at him bad. But if you pull up that Gemara in
Rabbi,
You're losing the voice again.
oh, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at this the source here. So what I said was in the Gemara in Bava Metzia, where it talks about this story. So it says that I think it's Bava Metzia. Where is this Gemara? I think it's Bava Metzia. The Gemara here, 84a. Let's just pull it up here. 84a in Bava Metzia. Talmud, Bava Metzia. '84a. So the Gemara here says, yeah, it goes through the whole story here. Yeah. So so here it says that Rabbi Yochanan was offended, and then it says he felt. It says Rabbi Yochanan felt weak. Cholash daite, felt depressed, and then it says Cholash Reish Lakish. Cholash Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish fell sick, fell ill. Asay Achsei, his sister came. Rabbi Yochanan's sister, Reish Lakish's wife, came crying, and she says, "Do it for the sake of my son." That they should, they should have a father. That he should pray for him to recover. Amar La, he told her, Azva Yisaymech ani echya asebish Azva Yisaymech. So he said to her, the pasuk says, "Don't worry about your children, because I will take care of them." So he says, "But do it for almanusi, do it for the sake of my widowhood." So he says, "Let your widows trust in me." It seems like Rabbi Yochanan was very angry. Now, the simple understanding is that Rabbi Yochanan didn't daven for Reish Lakish to get better. And then when he died, Rabbi Yochanan, all of a sudden, he was extremely pained over losing him. And they couldn't find anything to calm Rabbi Yochanan down. He was like, but the actual cause of his death, it's a little vague here in Bava Metzia, what caused him to die. In other words, they had that dialogue, which we spoke about yesterday, that you didn't benefit me at all because I was a leader over there. And Rabbi Yochanan said, I provided benefit to you because I brought you under the wings of the Shekhinah. And then they both seem to have been offended and weakened. And seemingly, I mean, it doesn't say that it was because Rabbi Yochanan put an ayin hara into Reish Lakish, like an evil eye. It's seemingly Reish Lakish felt bad that he insulted Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan was insulted, and ultimately Reish Lakish fell sick. And but here Rashi seems to say, and the way he understands it, seems to be because he put his eyes against him, like because Rabbi Yochanan was angry at him, like he made an evil eye against him. So that's the way seemingly Rashi, I guess, learns that way, that he put an evil eye against him. And oh yeah, Rashi brings from Bava Metzia here. Yeah. So anyway, bottom line is that's the story of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, and that's very interesting what you read over there. That we don't find any of Rabbi Yochanan, Reish Lakish's children to be famous scholars. So that's that's seeming. And so what Rabbi Steinsaltz says is seemingly he did pass away at a young age. That's a sad part of the story if that's true. Because it's interesting that we don't find anyone by the name of the son of Reb Shimon ben Lakish. Okay. Anyway, let's let's just continue over here. So the Gemara over here continues and says that he found this son of Reish Lakish, and he said, so he lifted his eyes and he looked at him, and the mother pulled the child away, and he said, "I don't want to happen to you what happened to your father." Now, what was this whole thing with his eyelids? Or eyelashes? It seems like there's two ways of learning. Either his eyelids, or somehow either his eyelids were very long. He used to use some type of a silver utensil to lift them up, or it's his eyelashes or his eyebrows, maybe.
Rabbi,
How do they?
question.
Yeah.
It says dal aineha v'chazebe. Does that mean that Rabbi Yochanan lowered his eyes and he looked at him? That's a couple
Dolly,
lines.
yeah. No, Dali Ene means that to lift his eyes. That he had these long either eyebrows, eyelashes, or eyelids that he says that he used to lift them up because it's interesting. It says he was extremely beautiful. He was extremely handsome, Rabbi Yochanan. And that's the whole story of Reish Lakish marrying his sister, because he saw how handsome he was. Now, somehow he had these very long eyelashes, maybe, that covered his eyes, and he used to use a silver fork, some type of silver utensil that he would lift it up with that, and this way he could see things. And when he wanted, so he looked at this boy. Quickly, the mother pulled him away and said, "I don't want you to, I don't want him to have any negative evil eye against you." And she quickly pulled him away. But the thing is that the Gemara we once learned was that Rabbi Yochanan actually used to sit in front of the mikvah, the women's mikvah. And the reason he did that was he wanted the women, after they would go to the mikvah, they should look at his beautiful face, beautiful appearance, and it would cause them to have children that were beautiful. And
he learned it in brachot.
Yeah, in brachos. So the thing is that the Gemara there deals with the fact that he's in a place that's maybe not so appropriate. But the Gemara doesn't say that. What about his looking at the women? Like, why should he be sitting there and he's seemingly, seeing all these women leave the mikvah, which seemingly would not be appropriate. So the commentaries say because he had these long eyes, the eyelids or eyelashes, it caused that he actually wouldn't see them walking by. So it was not a issue of tznius of him gazing at these women, because he was totally secluded behind these long eyelashes that covered him over. But in any event,
he didn't see there, but they saw him.
They saw him. Yeah, that's the bottom line. All right.
But what if somebody walked by and saw him sitting there?
No, that was good. He wanted the women.
No, I'm not talking about the women. I'm talking about men who walk by.
Yeah, but first of all, men are not supposed to walk by generally a women's mikvah. But the thing is that they saw that his eyelashes were covered his eyes anyway. So I guess that shouldn't be a problem. They see it. They see clearly.
What if non-Jews walked by and saw this man sitting by the women's mikvah? I mean, they don't talk either.
What do you mean? I'm not sure. What prohibition will there be if goyim see?
Oh, look at that man! He's standing there watching the women coming out of the women's
No, you
Yeah.
could see that his eyes were covered over. I don't think it's an issue. But anyway, all right. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Sei gesund.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone.